All right, let's turn our attention now towards a few different types of tests that are used in statistics. While there are many tests that are used, we're only going to cover a few of the basics here. We'll start off with just understanding that many of these tests that are used in statistics, such as Ttest, ANOVAs, and Pearson's correlations, are used in order to rule out chance. So if I'm going to measure the interaction between two variables, or make a comparison between two variables or two groups, once I come to a conclusion as to the relationship between those two groups or variables, or even the difference between the two groups or variables, I need to ultimately decide and figure out if the difference or relationship is true, if the difference is due to the essence of those variables, or if perhaps they are due to chance. And it is a chance factor that is contributing to the findings. So the first of these tests that are used is known as a T-test. A T-test is used to compute for two means or two variables to see if they come from either the same population or to understand if the difference between the two groups is due to chance or due to some variable within the groups that account for the difference between those two groups. So let me give you a quick example. Let's consider that an analyst wants to study the amount that people from Pennsylvania and people from California spend and understand the differences between their spending per month, even let's say on clothing. It wouldn't be practical for us to record the spending of every single individual or family in both states, and therefore we would take a sample of spending habits from selected groups of individuals from each state. And the group may be of any small to moderate size. And for this example, let's say that the sample group is 200 individuals. So if the average amount of Pennsylvanians comes to $500, then on clothing, and all Californians spend $1,000 per month, so it's $500 for Pennsylvanians and $1,000 for Californians, right? Then it is highly unlikely that 200 randomly selected individuals all spent that exact amount respective of their state. Thus, if an analyst or a statistician came to these results, then it is safe to conclude that the difference between the sample groups is really indicative of a significant difference between the populations as a whole of each state. And that's what a T-test might help me conclude. That is not that each person spent $500 and $1,000, but that there was a difference between the groups sizable enough that explains the average. So another type of test that is used is called the ANOVA test, which is short for analysis of variance. And in this type of statistical analysis, we are measuring the differences among our statistical numbers, among our findings. How much is a finding, does it vary from, let's say, the average in a particular group? So if the average person spends $500 in Pennsylvania, how do we measure the people who spend $2,000 in Pennsylvania versus that person who spent $100 in Pennsylvania? There's variability and variance between the people within the state. And so an ANOVA measurement would help us analyze and understand the variability and the variance within this group. Finally, we talk about the Pearson's correlation coefficient. We've already talked about the correlation coefficient in previous chapters. This is a measurement that is assessed from a range of minus 1.0 to positive 1.0. And it's an assessment to see how two variables correlate or connect to each other. The higher the number up to on the positive means that as one variable increases, the other variable is increasing as well. So if I have a positive 0.70, that's a very strong correlation showing that two variables are coalescing or connected to each other. If I have a negative 0.01, that's a fairly low correlation. It's not a very strong correlation. The closer to 0 one gets, the weaker the correlation. The further away from 0, either in the positive or the negative realm, the stronger the correlation and the implication of the finding. So that about sums it up for these three types of tests that we use to figure out and assess chance in statistics. Okay, we have just one more module to go, and that will wrap it up for statistics. So we'll see you in a moment.